Hello, my name is Kevin Biggins, Vice Chairman of the FedEx MEC Retirement and Insurance Committee. Joining me today is RNI Chairman Captain Ben Douglas and Negotiating Committee Member Captain Rich Brown. Guys, thanks for being here today.
Thanks, Kevin.
It's good to be here, Kevin.
So at one point, all FedEx employees were under the same defined benefit plan. What has happened since that time?
Well, Kevin, we know that our CBA protects our retirement plan. So for us, not a lot has changed other than we've received a few bumps on our defined contribution plan. But for the rest of the employees at FedEx, the non-union employees, the changes have been much greater. They started out with the same defined benefit plan that pilots had, but then in the early 2000s, FedEx moved the non-union employees over to a cash balance plan, which helped FedEx out because the risks and the liabilities that are involved with that particular setup for that cash balance plan were lower than for the traditional benefit plan that they took the rest of the employees out of. As a matter of fact, they offered that that cash balance plan to the pilots, and it was basically turned down flat, as it was not worth anywhere close to the value of our current traditional plan. And then going forward, FedEx has further tried to reduce their risk and de-risk their retirement plans by moving all of the non-union employees out of the defined benefit world altogether. As of 2020, no new non-union employees have a defined benefit plan. They've been moved into a defined contribution plan consisting of a 401k plan with a match.
And turning our attention now over to the defined contribution side of things, what's that history look like at FedEx?
So prior to 1999, the only defined contribution plan that we had was the profit sharing plan. The 1999 contract brought on the pilot money purchase pension plan in exchange for the profit sharing plan. And then we negotiated a 401k, and that led to the pilot retirement savings plan. So we went from the profit sharing plan to the pilot money purchase pension plan to the 401k plan to where we're currently now in our defined contributions, which is known as the pilot retirement savings plan.
Okay, so we have a defined contribution, we have a defined benefit plan, we have both. What's the advantages, particular of the defined benefit plan? What are those benefits to our pilots? Why is that good for us?
Well, the biggest benefit is that it's a fixed payment for life, which allows pilots to know how much money they're going to have at that. It decreases their risk for a portion of their retirement plan, which actually allows them to maybe increase the risk on that they're willing to accept in their defined contribution plan and maybe grow the retirement as a whole. It also provides a percentage of our retirement plan that the employer accepts all of the funding and longevity risks. And the defined benefit plan is also a way to put money away, tax deferrable, that's not subject to the $57,000 limit on defined contribution plans.
And despite the trending away from defined benefit plans in corporate America, there are some benefits to the company in having a defined benefit plan. Could you explain some of those?
Sure. Primarily, it acts as a great tool to recruit talent. We're one of the last airlines that has a defined benefit plan. And so in that regard, it does make FedEx the premier airline to be at. Secondly, there are tax-advantaged opportunities for FedEx as they put contributions into the defined benefit plan. They do receive tax deductions for that contribution.
Now, there are some disadvantages of having a defined benefit plan. In particular, could you talk about some of them from the pilot's perspective?
Well, with our current traditional plan for our defined benefit, the two biggest disadvantages have to do with risks in the plan. The first of which is inflation risk, which is something that we know is occurring. Every year, that flat amount that we get in retirement gets smaller. No matter what amount we set that cap at, it gets smaller every year unless it's indexed to inflation or it's raised every time we go into negotiations. And the other disadvantage is the risk of a stress termination. We have to remember that FedEx not only has to be able to fund our retirement while we're employed, but they also have to continue to fund it in retirement. So our time horizons are however many years there are till retirement, plus hopefully 25 or 30 years in retirement for each of our pilots. So if something were to happen to FedEx and they were unable to fund our retirement plan, then the plan would go to the pension benefit guarantee and we would lose a large percentage of the benefits that we've earned.
And we've seen that play out with our other airline brethren this past couple of decades, haven't we?
Sure have.
So what are some of the disadvantages for the company in having a defined benefit plan?
So the main disadvantages for the company is the uncertainty of the liabilities that the company has to fund the plan and the investment rate or the investment risk that's associated with funding the plan. They have an immense amount of costs involved with maintaining the plan, which is normal servicing costs. They have actuaries and attorneys and wealth management firms that are managing the assets inside the trust. But at the end of the day, the company is much more readily able to handle those market fluctuations than the pilot is. So I would say that they incur the vast majority of the uncertainty and the volatility of providing that fixed benefit for the pilot. But again, they can certainly withstand that better than we can.
So with our current plans, with the DC plan, we're taking all the risk for that portion of our retirement, and we expect the company to take the risk for the other part of our retirement, the defined benefit plan. And that's one of the reasons that we're fighting to increase that defined benefit plan, is so that the company who's better able to handle that volatility and that risk takes on that risk for us and protects us as we go into retirement.
Okay, turning our attention now to the defined contribution plans. From a pilot's perspective, what are the pros and cons of having such a plan?
Well, the defined contribution plan, the good parts of a defined contribution plan for the employee have to do with it's immediately in your name. The money is tax advantaged. Because it's in your name, it is portable and it's transferable. It also gives you a lot of control over the investment and how risky or how conservative you want to be with that investment. That also can be a con because we're not all investment experts. Although some people like that part of it, it may not be as good as for everyone. Some other disadvantages are that we're taking on all of the longevity and the investment risk involved with that plan. As we said before, we're accepting that risk for our defined contribution plan. The company should accept the risk for the other part of our retirement in the defined benefit plan.
And what about for the company?
Well, the company essentially is minimizing their risk. So all they have is a fixed contribution amount to the IRS limit that they have to provide to the employee. They have to maintain the ERISA requirements for the plan to maintain its qualified status, and then they have to present options available to the employee to be able to allocate their assets to. But as far as the downside for the company, there's minimal downside, and as Rich alluded to earlier, really we, the employee, are the ones that takes on pretty much all the risks. So it changes from the defined benefit plan that the company absorbs all the risks to the defined contribution plan that is less expensive to the company and the employee takes on all that risk.
With our plan designs, could you share the strengths of having both a defined benefit plan and a defined contribution plan?
Well, by having both types of plans, we are essentially spreading out our risk, and that we have a large portion of our money that's in our name at all times, and we can control that money so that if something happens to FedEx, we still have that amount of money, versus the defined benefit portion of our plan where FedEx takes the lion's share of the risks in that money, and it provides us a certain benefit in retirement, so that we may be able to incur even more risk on our defined contribution plan and maybe increase the total amount of our retirement value for our retirement years.
So it helps the employee from a retirement planning perspective. We're all different. We all have different goals and needs and wants in retirement. And so having both plans allows us that flexibility to mitigate those risks. We know we'll have a fixed income stream to put food on the table and a roof over our heads. And then we have the defined contribution based on our risk tolerance and our needs and wants in retirement planning to be able to either flex up or flex down to provide a replacement of that income that we're going to be losing in retirement.
All right, well, thanks, Ben and Rich, for being here today. We appreciate it. And if you have any questions, please contact us at ftx.alpa.org. Thanks again for watching, and fly safe.